One of the things that was taught to me learning traditional mindfulness was there is no struggle in the present moment. And I remember thinking of that quote as I was standing at the door of the hospital room about to, see your child as now quadriplegic.
Well, put down that Sunday roast and prepare those ears for the Academy of Imperfects, where experts in their field share their wisdom on the subject of imperfection. Today, mindfulness coach to elite athletes Emma Murray explains how mindfulness can help us perform at our best. So join students Hugh, Ryan and Josh as they refill their inkwells for the Academy of Imperfection.
Yes, the music that denotes learning. So good to be back in the Academy.
It's nice if people imagine you sitting on a brown Chesterfield couch, spinning around with a big pipe and saying that, yes, the music that denotes learning. Stroking a cat.
in a dressing gown.
In a dressing gown, yeah.
Well, we're very lucky today. We're joined by Emma Murray, someone I've known for quite some time now. I think a lot of people, especially Richmond Football Club supporters, will definitely know who Emma Murray is. Emma is the high-performance mindset coach for the Richmond Football Club, which must be a demanding job, but I think more demanding by far as she's a mum of 4, which we will get to in a minute. She's also the founder of High-Performance Mindfulness, a company that uses mindfulness, psychology and meditation to help people perform at their absolute best. So there's a lot in there we want to talk to you about today. She's also an accredited mindfulness and meditation teacher, NLP master practitioner, NLP?
Neuro-linguistic programming.
Right, okay. Clinical hypnotherapist.
Yes, I'm going to make you all into chickens by the end of this episode.
Literally?
Yes.
Wow, that is incredible. Most hypnotherapists make you feel like you are a chicken, but if you make us chickens,
I'm next level, yeah.
My family might have an issue with it, but anyway, we can talk about it later when I'm a chicken.
And we need a better name for the Academy of Imperfection if that's going to happen today.
That's true.
Yeah.
Anyway, so, Emma, we're so wrapped to have you in here today, and there's so much just reading through your bio that we could talk about today. How are you to start with?
Yeah, I'm good. Excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Oh, so good. First things first, how are the boys going to go this year?
Classic ask question.
Yeah. Well, they're looking fit.
Good,
they've had a great pre-season.
Yeah, it felt like the right.
To go.
I'm just like being a footy commentator. Like, how are the boys going to go this year? Good. Any issues looking at the season so far?
No, they're all good.
Yeah,
they're
good,
great.
Good, mate, good.
It's our year. We're back.
Oh, that's all I needed to know. Where do you start? This is like I'm so excited about this because like meditation, mindfulness in terms of like mindset, especially with athletes, I feel like because the fact that you work with Richmond, and I imagine like lots of different athletes in different sports and stuff, but working with people who are operating at such a high, they have such high expectations of themselves, and then everyone else watching them has such high expectations of them. I don't even really know what the question is, except for like...
Well, let me jump in then.
Please. save me, Emma.
It's, when we look at sport, you're right, the pressure, the expectation, just the public nature of it is so extreme that if we can create tools that help the athlete cope in that moment and still be able to bring their best, then we know that they're going to help us in our world that maybe isn't playing out in an arena of 100,000 people with, media commenting on it and everything else. So what I love about the work that I do is that it's come out of real life and it's come out of me being able to say to a Richmond football player, hey, try this, do that. They come back and give me real-time feedback and you start to see the patterns. Okay, that really helps when in this situation, that helps with expectation, that helps with self-doubt. And then you can take those tools, and I do a lot of work in motorsport. I'm with Oscar Piastri going into F1 this year.
Oh, my God. I mean, that is the ultimate.
That is the ultimate. Yeah. But not only is F1 the ultimate, his story of taking Daniel Ricciardo, a fellow Aussie's seat, the whole way that played out in the public, this 21-year-old has to sit in a car. He's been out of a car for an entire year And so when he's getting into that car for his very first race as a 21-year-old, it's like extreme. How do you prepare for that? So what I love about these tools is that they have been tried over and over again.
Everyone I speak to about mindfulness has got a different experience of it, interpretation of it, definition of it, which I think is all fine and that sort of makes sense, and I've got no problems with that. But maybe a better question is, why is mindfulness so important to you personally?
Yeah. So mindfulness traditionally, as we know, or most people know, comes out of Buddhism or Hinduism, and we have to remember that mindfulness was created as a tool to help a monk become enlightened. That's the most basic way that I can describe it, like 2,500 years ago. Pretty sure 2,500 years ago, a monk did not have an electronic device attached to him that was constantly giving him a stream of information. He didn't have traffic. He didn't have deadlines.
Well, if he did, it would have been the Motorola Razr, probably like one of the early flip phones. Yeah,
probably.
Yeah. Some of the Nokia 3110 or something. Yeah,
probably.
Yeah.
So what the premise of mindfulness is that if I can sit in the present moment and have zero attachment to anything. Now that
meaning like...
Yeah, I'm so glad you said meaning what, because that word, so many mindfulness coaches like mindfulness is non-judgmental, non-attachment, it's like, what does that even mean? So let me use an example. If I came in to do this podcast and I sat down here and I've got all this stuff going on for me. So maybe, I'm a bit anxious or maybe my breath's, shallow. And then you start talking to me. If I am attaching to that interaction, I'm attaching this emotion of what I'm feeling to what's going on here. So I'm attaching and I'm starting to say, well, maybe they don't like me. Maybe, we don't have a good connection. Maybe they're disappointed in who they've got. And, what if they, it doesn't go in the direction I want? So I'm taking all these feelings and attaching it to what's going on for me in this moment. And now I'm creating all of these stories in my head, and I show up to this performance moment of sharing a podcast with you, and I'm now talking from that feeling and thought that was generated from my attachment to what do they think of me? What if they don't like me? Am I going to be good enough today? And so in traditional mindfulness, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to walk into this door and just go, what can I see? Can I hear my footsteps on the ground? Let me just hear what you're saying to me and be aware of how that changes my internal environment. Maybe I want to course correct my internal environment because it's getting a bit tense, so maybe I want to take a couple of breaths. And I have zero attachment to what all of this stuff means. I'm just sort of letting it be, letting it flow, sometimes course correcting it.
So, sorry to interrupt, but that's sort of like what you're talking about is really just observing things as they come into your orbit as opposed to attaching like
judgment and meaning and it's good or it's bad. They like me, they don't like me.
Yeah.
It's not me. Like if I walked into this room and I'm already in my head imagining what am I going to say if they say this and what if I answer that wrongly, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
When one of the most simple ways and this is how we started at Richmond Football Club, we had a red ball and we called this red ball was like our
football. Oh, no.
It was actually a round ball.
A round ball.
Yeah.
It's like, geez, that really needed a lot of education. All right, Dusty, this is a football.
Yeah. We had a rounder ball than the other round ball.
Yes.
And we would demonstrate that I have one attention, one focus, and that when that attentional focus goes to, let's say, the umpire, imagine I've thrown the red ball to the umpire. So now my attention is on the umpire and what's the umpire doing. Well, I don't have any red ball on my feet or my stance or where the opposition is or where the other red ball is. I'm not seeing anything or feeling anything or paying attention to that or getting any cues from the environment because my one focus, my one attention is now on the umpire. Oh, and now the ball comes into my area and I'm a bit slow to react because my stance is not ready and my feet are not on and I haven't got the cues in the environment. So maybe I miss the ball slightly. So now my red ball goes to, Trent Cotchin because he didn't kick it the way I wanted it to kick, and that's not fair. Or maybe my red ball goes up to the coach. What's the coach going to think of me, and is he going to play this in the review? Well, again, I don't have any attention or focus on my body, on what my opposition's doing, what the game is presenting to me, and then the ball comes back into my area, or it's now time to defend, and I'm even worse. And now I get down in this spiral. I'm having a shocker. This is a bad day.
Yeah. I feel like cut you off when you were getting into a story about your own. I think you were about to talk about your own journeys.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I'm very mindful of you. Good mindful listening there.
Oh, pleasure.
Tig, we're at school. That's your gold. That's your gold star.
Thank you. I work very well with praise, just so you know.
Okay. So what I was saying was about what a full practice mindfulness is and how we have to work hard at it. And so we tend to see if people seek it out themselves and go on that journey, that it's a really powerful, incredible journey. Like I look at mindfulness and I feel like it was a gift that was handed to me. And when I first learnt mindfulness, it was like everything made sense to me. So then I am diligent to comply to it, but realistically, I'd give myself a 2 out of 10 every day. Like that's how hard it is in today's world.
Did the concept of mindfulness click with you immediately when you heard it, when you sort of got?
No, yes and no. So I was a former athlete and that didn't work out so well, probably because I didn't have this stuff sorted, and I moved into coaching at
What sport were you?
At netball.
Yep.
And, I played national level under 21 and
What position?
what do you reckon?
Oh, okay. Let me
Ryan is.
I used to play mixed netball.
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess.
It's not a hard
centre,
question.
really,
I'm
a lot
like
of them.
I'm like
wing attack.
5'3". Like
Wing
it's
attack.
not a hard question.
Wing attack?
Yeah, wing attack and centre. There you go.
No,
You are on, Ryan.
God.
Another gold star. You are
Wow.
flying.
Wow.
Yeah. But I'm
proud of myself. I guess.
I moved into coaching, and as I was in that coaching space, I started really becoming fascinated by the mental stories, and I know they're attachments now, but I didn't know then. All these mental rules and stories that we create as athletes. Cricket's a great one. Be careful in the first 20 balls, and it's easier to get out when a new person comes in. It's like it's a ball and a bat, and you're doing the same thing every ball. Serving out the last game of the match, and it's like you're doing the same process, but all of the layers of attachment and expectation and pressure and what that does to our performance.
Can I just go to the word attachment again? So I've heard the word attachment 1,000 times, but every time I hear it, my brain stops for a bit to focus on it and think, hang on, what exactly is it like the story that?
Ironically, your red ball goes to the word attachment.
Yeah, it does.
Yes,
It just goes
and
there.
you know what? I was like that for a long time, and I have used attachment more in the first 5 minutes of this podcast than I've ever used as a mindfulness teacher. The Richmond boys would be like, I've never heard her use the word attachment ever.
Okay, so it would be a story.
The story that you tell. So, we make up stories based on all of these, and these stories create feelings, or sometimes the feelings create stories. So if I go back to the cricket example, it's like be super careful in the first 20 balls. And so it's like they create this whole story about you can get out more easily in the first 20 balls. I don't know what happens on ball 21 that makes it so different, but it's like the first 20 balls are super hard. So we have this thought put into our head since we're a junior cricket player that it becomes, so a thought we think often enough becomes a belief.
Yeah.
And now I act off those beliefs. So I have this belief that I have to be super careful in the first 20 balls. Now, let me tell you what happens. I'm running this story of be careful in the first 20 balls. So now my mind that is wired to keep me safe, that's the whole premise. I wish everyone knew this in mindfulness. We're working with a mind and body that is purely wired for survival. So my mind, and this is why the sporting scenario is so important, because these tools are fighting against human nature, are trying to arrest human nature that's like, danger, 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 I want to get out of here. So this cricket player is facing the first 20 balls and he has this belief system like, I could get out here. Like, this is a danger time for me. And that thought changes our physiology. So this is the gold piece of performance, mindset work. We think of mindset means just what we think. It's what our thoughts do to our body and what our body does to our thoughts. And so now the physiology of this cricket player, he's got tense shoulders. His grip is super tight. His feet are flat. And he's telling himself, be careful of this, be careful of that. Make sure you don't do this. He has zero focus on the ball because we only have one focus, and his focus is his red ball is off on all of these stories. He's now got physiology that he would never hit the ball with in training. It's like he would at training have relaxed shoulders and his feet he'd be up on his toes. And he gets out and everyone in cricket goes, it was because it was in the first 20 balls.
And then just sort of like perpetuates the
story. And it's like, it had nothing to do with that. It's because this guy had tight shoulders, a tight grip, flat feet, and wasn't watching the ball.
Yeah, it's in the thing that makes me think about often, because I've like worked in bits and pieces in TV over the years, and often like I used to work on we used to work on Rove.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, a couple of years.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry. Yeah. Regular segment. Anyway, but part of that show is like, all the cast on the couch, and there's like Rove at the desk, and this is a very common TV show thing, like any sort of panel show where you're trying to kind of like create spontaneous conversations that feel or that are real, and like on The Project or any of those shows. But often what would happen is the really good conversations would happen when we go to the ad break, like off camera. And you're always thinking or saying, God, if only we could get this on screen. But from what you're saying now, I think it's not impossible, but very, very hard, because at least one of the performers in that group are going to be nervous for whatever reason because they're attaching their story and they're thinking, I better be really funny in this conversation because if I'm funny, then I'll get more time on air.
Yeah. There are three key things that pull our red ball off the present moment and into that danger space. And it doesn't matter if you're an athlete or if you're, an at-home mum or a corporate executive. The first one is fear of failure. Like, what if I stuff up? What if I'm no good at this? What if I don't meet my targets? What if I don't reach this goal? The second one is this obsessive focus on the outcome. That's the footy player that's counting his stats, and it's like if I've got my red ball on how many kicks I've got, how many kicks, my teammates got, what I need to get to be safe in this team, I've got no focus on the game. So it's not just we need to know targets and goals, but it's this obsessive focus on them. And the third one, and the biggest one that outstrips either of those, is a fear of other people's opinions. If I had a room, and I've done this with the Richmond boys before, and say to them, okay, you're out there, you're losing, what's going on for you? Their first fear is, what will my teammates think of me? What will my family think of me? And so in the description, the scenario that you were describing.
When I was on Rove.
When you're on Rove.
Yep.
In your regular appearance on Rove.
Yeah. Thanks. So.
Those people on the couch are trying to curate something that people will like because their attention is on that fear of other people's opinions. What we're trying to do is use mindfulness and the tools of mindfulness. This is the absolute best way I can describe mindfulness in that performance space, is to have awareness of the external environment. So in your case, it's like, okay, there's cameras, they're about to be turned on. Those cameras are, sending this picture out to a huge audience. Rove had, you had a huge following.
One of the most popular shows in Australia, yeah.
That's right.
Good memory. Thanks for pointing that out.
The cricket player, let's use him. Because another story in cricket is that when a new bowler comes in, you're more at risk of getting out. So the what the external environment, the information the external environment is giving me is that there's now a guy that's coming in that's a short ball specialist. I'm able to assess that external environment with zero sort of stories around it. So I'm just seeing it for what it is. Then I check in on my internal environment. Okay, my shoulders have got tense. I internally have gone into a story of, I've got to say this, I've got to do that.
Yeah, I'm not as funny as that person. Yeah.
Pre-rehearsing a joke in my head.
Yep.
And now I course correct. So the cricket player would be like, soften my shoulders, loosen my grip, get up on my toes. The person on the couch would be like, take a breath, empty my head, remind myself to listen.
Mm-hmm.
And so now I'm in that moment, and I guess this is where high-performance mindfulness, which is what I've called the work that I do, is different to traditional mindfulness. A monk isn't really course correcting. He's just sitting there and he's like just being in this stillness, because he doesn't have all these distractions and external environment that's changing, and there's expectation, there's pressure, and there's all this stuff. But to ask someone who does have goals, he doesn't want to be a test cricketer. You do want to be a successful comedian. I want to pay my mortgage. I want the Richmond Football Club to win. When we have all these goals and things that we want to achieve, to sit in the external environment and just let our internal environment be. So that cricket player in traditional mindfulness would just let his internal environment be. Okay, I'm feeling nervous and my shoulders are tense. I just let that work its way out. But now I'm facing with a short ball. So high performance mindfulness, it's like, now let me course correct. Now let me actually adjust my physiology, adjust my focus, so that I put myself in the best possible place to perform at my best, to bring my strengths.
So that's all so helpful, obviously.
Is it?
Yes,
does this make sense to you?
It does. Yeah.
Because Hugh, you're sort of looking across at me like going,
I'm just thinking about times in my life where I've really, really struggled with this. And it's television for me. I really do it, but every time I do it, it is so far from.
Oh, you had on the Today Show, you had a few.
Oh, Today Show, shocking.
That's nice. Like if you had fear of other people's opinions, Ryan's just not like, on the Today Show. You had some shockers.
No. Only because you told. I didn't even see it, but you told me the stories after the fact.
No, it doesn't exist. I can't say that for an interview anyway. But the project is another one that every time I do that, I always sit there going, just be yourself, like just relax. And then I get there, and to use the red ball thing. I was going to say my red balls are everywhere, but red balls are everywhere. Like it's like
yes.
I'm on a panel with people I really respect, like Peter Helly was there last time, and I respect him so much. I want him to like me. And I'm also, so there's that. But I'm thinking, if I could so easily stuff this up really badly, and that's failure. Like I don't want to fail here. And also knowing that I could actually do a good job, because I do it usually when I speak on radio or podcast or whatever. But and then there's the cameras, and there's also people, producers and like camera and stuff who you're there with, but they don't acknowledge you. Like you're invisible when you walk past them. No one's like, oh, g'day, mate. Good luck. It's just, and I'm like, they don't like me. They don't think I should be here.
Yes.
So all those things, for me, make the project. I'm always terrible. I always go, what the hell was that?
Yeah.
Like, that is, I didn't say anything that I usually say. I was so stressed the whole time. So.
And so what we do in that moment is we say, just be yourself, just be yourself, just be yourself. And so this subconscious mind starts fighting that, because your subconscious mind is wired to keep you safe and to keep you alive. That's it. It's not wired to make you a great television presenter or, good at your job. And so this subconscious mind kicks in and it's like, this could be bad for you. Like it's trying to get you out of here. Don't do this. Remember that time you stuffed up and did you see that guy? He didn't talk to you. He already doesn't like you. And so you then come in with that human brain, the conscious mind saying, just be yourself. You've done a good job before. The subconscious mind's like, you're not hearing me. This is bad. Get out of here. So it ramps up the evidence of why you're crap. And it starts, yelling at you more. Get out, get out. Now your physiology is getting ready to run or getting ready to escape. So now I've got tight shoulders. I've got a really short breath. I've got like fixed eyes. The frontal lobe of my brain is shut down. And they ask you a question. One, you can't think creatively. You probably didn't hear the question in full because you're so focused on an escape route, and you're trying to answer with a physiology that is tense and tight, so you can't really articulate with the same flow that you normally would. You can sense that you're not doing a great job, so then the stories kick in even more about how bad this is, and it's...
So perfect example for me with what you just said then. Hamish McDonald I'm talking about how
On the project.
talking about how evil the big tech companies are. And I just thought everyone would be on board. And I was starting to feel reasonably okay. And I was starting to relax, like, finally, I've done a good project interview, finally. And then he says to me, surely you don't think we can just blame big tech companies for our addiction.
Oh.
And so he disagreed with me. And I didn't see that coming. And I literally couldn't speak or think of an answer. So he threw that to me. And I just went, And
Hamish, we're going to go to a break, Hamish.
and Peter Hellier looked at me and sort of panicked a bit and went, and he answered the question for me. And I just was like, how often in my life am I not able to talk or think? Never. This never happens. Why is it fucking happening here on the project again? And I think that's just exactly what you're saying, that all these stories started happening for me.
Yeah. And I think this is a really important point for where we're at right now, particularly since COVID. So we know that we have this fight and flight response, and we know that when our red ball goes off into all of these imaginary scenarios and stories and fear of other people's opinions, the response in our body is that danger, danger, danger. I've either got to fight or I've got to run. But there's another response. There's multiple responses, but there's another really important response, and that is the freeze response. So when we see in the wild, a wild animal, you'll see him freeze until the threat passes. And so when we go into freeze mode, it can look like what it looked like for you, just nothing. And, other people will go into blabbering, but, you've gone into this freeze response. And so this messaging from our body to our mind is like, I'm in danger. I'm frozen. I'm stuck here. And we get into this functional freeze mode where it's like I'm still functioning. I'm still getting my checklist ticked off, but I'm sort of like it's like I'm hovering over myself, watching myself just go through life, not really present, not really in it, and I'm just frozen.
Have you felt that personally before, that feeling? Or
in terms of that fight and flight response, the biggest gift anyone can have is to know what that fight and flight response that danger, danger, danger response looks like for you. So for me, it's very victim, like poor me, no one's helping me, I've got too much to do, no one understands. That when I drop into that, then I know I've gone into that danger, 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 I'm not coping here. So someone else will drop into aggressive, cynicism, someone will go into really quiet, people-pleasing, micromanagement. All of these things are just us going into that danger, danger, danger mode.
How quickly are you able to recognize that that's happening? Like, are you become aware of yourself that you've the poor me response?
Yeah, I mean, I can catch it really quickly. Whether I choose to do something about it or not depends on the day and my mental state and really how deep I've got into, we call it the B game, how deep I've gone into that B game, spiral. So I can always see it. And that's the first step. If you cannot see it, if you cannot catch it, you can't get out of it. So an athlete, if you can't catch when your red ball has left the game and gone into that unhelpful place of danger, 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 notice I just said unhelpful. I didn't say negative. Like we get stuck in this good, bad, positive, negative. It's like either particular thoughts and feelings are helping you in this moment or they're not helping you in this moment.
Yeah.
So we want an athlete to catch when their focus and thoughts and feelings have gone into a place that is not helping them perform at their best. So a really good example of this is a lot of people, why is public speaking so difficult? It's because of that fear of other people's opinions. And so when I go into the thought of what if people laugh, what if I make a mistake, what will they think of me? Now my physiology changes, my shoulders are tight, my heart's racing, my breath is shallow. That does not help me project my voice. That does not help me remember my words. That does not help me connect with the audience. So is it negative? Well, no, I'm not standing there saying, I'm the worst, this is terrible. A lot of people are saying, I hope I do this well. I hope I speak. I hope they like me. So that doesn't feel negative, but the thoughts and the feelings are not helping me. I've gone way off track. I don't even know what you asked me, but I've landed down there.
It's good.
So what I'm trying to say is you need to catch what your unhelpful thoughts and feelings look like, feel like, and sounds like, because they are what's driving your habits or behaviour that are not helping you.
And they're always deeply rooted in our attachment or our stories.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So I come home from work. I start telling myself I've had a hard day. It's been really challenging. I believe that when I have a hard day, I deserve something good. I start feeling heavy and tired and slow. And then that drives the habitual habit of I open a bottle of wine. And we go, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm not going to open that bottle of wine anymore. But we don't change the thoughts and feelings that drove me to open that bottle of wine. We just say, I'm not going to have that bottle of wine anymore. So now I go home and I'm like, I'm not having that wine. I'm not having that wine. And the subconscious mind's like, but you deserve it. You worked so hard. Like, why don't you start that on a day when you haven't worked so hard? And then I start to feel agitated and I open the bottle of wine. And then it spirals more unhelpful thoughts, more unhelpful feelings. And so we have to get really good at catching what those thoughts and feelings look like for us because they're different. And society labels some unhelpful thoughts and feelings as really good. Like we have labelled the person that says, yes, I'll do that. No, I'll take it on. Yeah, I'll help you. We've labelled that as really great. But we've labelled the whinger and the blamer as we don't want them in our team. We want the person that says yes to everyone. They're both this danger feelings and thoughts that are being driven by fear of other people's opinions. They just show up, one in an acceptable way, one in an unacceptable way. Neither are great for our team or ourselves.
I really liked something you said before about when you were talking about the unhelpful thoughts that you have, that you can recognise them, but it doesn't necessarily mean you'll do something about them depending on the day. Because I feel like they can be really alluring.
Yeah.
They're really seductive, these thoughts.
Because we think that they're true. It's like, I don't have enough time. No one's supporting me. Like, I don't want to let that go because, like, I deserve to have that story because it is really hard for me and I do have a lot on. And so if I just let go of that story, will people really see how hard it is for me? Will people really, give me the accolades that I need for that? So, and most of these stories we have had for a very long time in our life and they've served us really well and they have helped us in certain environments. Maybe as a child I was like, oh, this is too hard. I'm so busy. And my mum packed my school bag, made my lunch, cleaned my room. So my mind's like, hey, that's really good. Use that strategy. But now I'm using it in my own business and it's not helping me.
Yeah. This is really left of field. And again, it's about something you were talking about before, but everyone was sort of in flow and I didn't want to jump in and ruin it. But, and it might be putting the cart before the horse, to use it for analogy, but I'd love to ask you about the role of joy and framing within. So the examples you've given before about sport, the challenges and these negative stories that you can tell, or it could be in any challenging environment where you start this fear of failure, this fear of other people's judgment. I have no idea if this is true, but it's just something that's occurred to me in the last few years when I've talked to people, and it was another example of this. It was a friend of ours, Hugh, who is a very good cricketer, who we were at Boxing Day Test, we were talking to him, and he had the chance to face Shane Warne in a match for about 15, 20 overs. And I said, what was that like? And he said it was the most.
I think he'd like to be named.
Would he?
Yeah, it's a good ending. It's Andrew Kent is his name.
Yeah. And well, you might be able to give the ending of how he went, but what he said, I mean, he survived 20 overs, so I think he did pretty well. But I said, what was that like? And he said it was the most fun I've ever had in my life. And I was thinking at the time, having played a lot of junior cricket and stopping when I was about 19, that I would have been so terrified, and the amount of stories that would have been going on in my head would have been. It would have been so embarrassing to do it. I wouldn't have wanted to be near it. I would have hated every minute of it. And obviously, Andrew has a hell of a lot more natural talent than I ever had. But it seemed to me like there was something different in the way he framed the experience that I never had when I played sport. It's just a sheer joy of how hard it was. So I don't know where this question goes, but I wonder is mindfulness
I can
involved
jump in
the
again.
way?
Yeah.
Joy and framing.
Yeah. I jumped in because it's like there's so much you could say on this, and I want to answer it in two ways.
Yeah.
One, a mindfulness way, one just like a psych way. So do you like roller coasters?
Oh, I haven't been on one in about 20 years.
Did you like them as a kid?
Yeah. Yeah, I didn't mind them.
Yeah. Did anyone hate them? Was anyone terrified of them
I
at
love
the
them.
table?
No.
Yeah, I like them.
Yeah.
Pretty good. Yeah.
So imagine that there's two people waiting to go on a roller coaster and they're waiting in the line. What's happening to their physiology is the same. So they're,
I went on a water slide last week, a really fast one, and I had this. I had a feeling of like, you go on, but I reckon I had both I was like, I don't want to do this. I'm scared.
Yeah, right.
Yeah,
okay.
anyway, go on.
Yeah, so physiologically, both people are going through the same thing. You know, their heart is starting to race and their breath's getting a bit shallow. They're feeling, maybe a little bit sick in their stomach. Those feelings are happening for them because they're about to go on a roller coaster. That is like danger, danger, danger. We're wired for survival. We're about to go on this thing where you go upside down. So my body is getting ready for that. Now, through our personal experiences, one person labels that as, I love roller coasters. This is so much fun. Now, maybe when they were a kid, they went with their family and they saw their brothers and sisters who loved it and their mum and dad were like, this is the best day and it's your birthday. Maybe someone else, their first experience was they went with, a friend who was terrified and said, oh, I'm not going on that. That's bad. So depending on what our experiences, one labels that physiology as I'm so excited. This is fun. They're reading those emotional signals in their body and that's all that's happening to them. There's literally chemicals and electrical wires going off in their body. They're putting a label to that as this is good, this is fun. The person next to them has got the same, electrical impulses and the same, chemicals, and they're labeling it as this is bad. I don't like this. And so the cricket example, somehow, somewhere, Andrew Kent had a belief system and maybe all his life he's thought, I just want to try and face a ball with Shane Warne. How fun would that be? That would be amazing. Maybe they practiced it in the backyard and, and so for him, he has those same feelings as another batsman facing Shane Warne would have, but he labels it completely different. So the role, not so much the role joy plays, but the role of framing what's going up in our body is really important. I get all these feelings. How do I label them? What do I say about them is super important. That's the first way I want to answer the question. The second way is from a mindfulness perspective, and this is where mindfulness goes a little bit array in our modern day world. In mindfulness, we're not supposed to label that at all. We're just supposed to let it be and let it move and let it shift. And there is no, I'm not trying to see that as being connected to anything. It's just happening in my body and I don't need to do anything with it and I don't need to make a judgment around it. And again, that might have been easy for the monk to do, but the monk wasn't getting on roller coasters or facing Shane Warne. So, not that we know of.
No, exactly. We don't know what's happened. I mean,
we don't know what they did back then.
He led a big life, Shane.
Yeah.
So he could have gone to a monastery, bought some overs.
I can imagine that actually. So whilst I learnt mindfulness, when I learnt mindfulness traditionally, we're at if I go right back to a question you asked me did straight away I sort of take to mindfulness and it makes sense to me and I loved it? No, not at all. I was a netball coach. I was at my coaching mentor's house and I found a book on her bookshelf that was Sacred Hoops, written by Phil Jackson, coach of the Chicago Bulls. And I started reading this book and this was a time when mindfulness was never talked about at all. And it just something in it really resonated with me. His whole philosophy was, if I can get these players in a mindful state, so fully just present in the nothingness of the game, how they instinctually react to that moment, how Michael Jordan, what he does from his instincts in that moment is going to be better than anything I could ever possibly teach him or coach him. So why don't I as coach just get him into that mindful state and let his brilliance do the rest? Which is fantastic, right? Incredible, courageous as a coach to take the hands off the wheel and do that.
Do not want to affect Michael Jordan's performance. with his brilliance and feel like
His ego.
His
Yeah.
ego,
Yeah.
Interesting.
And trusting that whatever these incredible athletes that I've been given to be custodian as a coach, that they're going to do an incredible thing in that moment if I can just provide an environment which allows them to be still. And to do that, that's hard work as a coach. I've got to remove fear of failure and pressure and expectation. But anyway, from that was in a time where I'd never even heard the word mindfulness. It wasn't a word that was around, and I took myself off. This was in my 20s to go and study mindfulness.
Oh, wow.
And when I learnt mindfulness from very traditional teachers, I was very agitated by it. It was like I followed this teacher around the whole weekend like, yeah, but I've got 4 kids and a mortgage and like, how does this work? And for an entire weekend, he said, Emma, you can do this now or you can do it when you're sick. You can do it now or you can do it when you're sick. That was his only answer to me. And I was so angry. I'm like, this doesn't even make sense. Like this guy, no kidding, he lived in a treehouse in a communal kibbutzi type thing. Like it was, I in my mind was fully like, it's okay for you to sit and meditate and have no attachment and blah, blah, blah. But I'm in a world with private school fees and mortgages. And this was a little bit later on, when I first learned it, I was a bit like, But by the time I went back and studied it more in depth, I had some kids and so I was sort of angry at it. We had to eat meals and you were not allowed to comment whether it was delicious or it was nice or, that's attaching to the taste of the food. It should be, I should just actually, what does it feel like in my mouth? What am I smelling? What are the texture of it? What's it doing as it goes into my body?
Accept the food. Don't judge it.
Just, yeah. We would do practices where in the morning it was silent mornings. You couldn't use any facial expression to acknowledge another person because that's me attaching to what you think of me by trying to make you feel I'm like, sort of saying, hey, if I'm like smiling at you, I'm trying to make you like me and make you feel like that I see you. And it's like, no, we have nothing like that. So I was like, this is insane, right? This is hard going. So when I hear people in today's world saying, my New Year's resolution is I'm going to be more mindful, it's like, do you really get what that means? So how about we, and this is what's driving me in my business, how about I teach that to you in a way that you can actually use in this world?
That would be great.
And that can actually help you. I mean, that's what I say to people, but if you'd like me to do that
to you. It's fine. I'm fine. I get it.
So that's where we're at.
Amazing.
I love that description. Thank you. It's really great. You've had challenges in your own life, certainly on a family front. Are you comfortable talking about that and then talking about the role that mindfulness maybe has played throughout that? Yeah,
because it was pivotal in my mindfulness journey. 6 years ago, my eldest son, so I'm mum of 4 children. It is like 3 too many children, 4 children. It is a lot of children. It's so many. But, 6 years ago, my son, 2 weeks before his 14th birthday, he went to the beach with a group of friends and, all the local kids were there. And he jumped from a pier and he broke his C6 vertebrae, and he sustained a spinal cord injury that left him quadriplegic with no feeling or movement from the chest and shoulders down. So, I know you have a lot of guests who all have these incredible stories, but one moment, like as I'm telling this story, I'm literally seeing myself back in my home office, tidying my files. I can see one of Will's friends running into the office to tell me there's been, an accident at the beach. I can hear my husband on the phone ringing me at the same time saying, hey, there's been an accident. This is pretty bad. And it's like in that moment, life will never be the same again. It will never be the same again to the day I die. Now, life is never going to be the same for any of us. It's a constantly moving, constantly changing thing. But I had been a mindfulness practitioner for many years before then and thought I knew it really well. But when Will was in ICU, he was in a coma because he swallowed a lot of water at the beach. And there was a night where they didn't think he'd make it through the night. And I don't know if you've been, I hope you haven't been on ICU, but it's crazy. You can't stay there as a parent. You can't sleep there. You have to go home. Can you imagine? That was my biggest thing. The night Will was injured, it's like they send you home. It's like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, that's wild. Yeah.
How do you go home in that situation?
I'd like to stay, please.
Yeah. And so for me, I walked up and down the corridor of the hospital, and there's a particular form of mindfulness training. So we're talking about this practice of mindfulness, but how do I train my mind to get really good at being, how do I train that red ball to stay in the present moment? Well, I train it with meditation, and a form of that you can do walking meditation. So I think of walking meditation as like taking that red ball and putting it on my feet, then putting it on my hips, then putting it on my shoulders. Like it's just stopping the red ball from being somewhere else effectively. You're giving the red ball a job. Hey, stay here. I think I walked up and down the hospital corridor for the entire night, just like up and down. I mean, I must have looked crazy, but for me, I needed an active way to practice mindfulness. And I remember at one point just stopping and going, oh, this is mindfulness. Oh, now I get all those teaching. Now it makes sense to me, because I had to brutally hold my attention on what I was seeing, feeling, hearing, because if I didn't, my red ball would be straight back to the what ifs, the if onlys, or what's it going to look like, all of that stuff. So for my own survival, I had to hold it on something, had to give it and this is what I teach athletes, you have to give your red ball a job in the moment to stay there. It's not going to stay there just because you've decided to be more mindful. And so that was a real awakening for me around the practice of mindfulness. I then remember very clearly, incidences along the journey, like, it still makes me emotional. The day you have to go and tell your child they're never going to walk again. He was put into a coma. So there is a moment in time where he is going to get woken up and told, you're never going to walk, you're never going to, feel anything. And so that is so intense. You can see how intense it is for me now. If I let my red ball go off to what that means for him and what he'll think and what, how will he process it? The pain as a parent to jump into your child's pain is like, you just can't go there. So that's when mindfulness was so brilliant to come back. And I developed a routine where I would say to myself, right here, right now, all I'm doing is walking into a room and having a conversation with my son. That is all I'm doing. I'm not losing my house because we can't afford it. My family hasn't broken up. Will's not depressed or angry. Like none of that is happening right now. So it's like I sort of had to talk my way through the process of mindfulness. And I just had this moment in time where I thought, if I break every moment up between now and the day I die into this, right here, right now, all I'm doing is having a conversation with Will. Right here, right now, all I'm doing is making dinner. I'm going to survive this. Like there's nothing. One of the things that was taught to me learning traditional mindfulness was I was told by the teacher, there is no struggle in the present moment. And I'd be like, well, that's not true. And I remember thinking of that quote as I was standing at the door of the hospital room about to, see your child as now quadriplegic. And it really resonated me with the struggle is not in that moment. There is no struggle in me walking into a room and having a conversation with my child. That is not where the struggle sits. The struggle sits when my red ball goes off into what is his pain? Why did I let him go to the beach? What if he never is independent? What if he never has a job? What if he can't do this? What if we don't do that? That is where the struggle sits. And none of that is happening in this moment. All that's happening in this moment is I'm walking into a room and having a conversation with my son.
Well, is that kind of like all of those thoughts are unhelpful to like sort
of what you're saying?
Completely
unhelpful. Like there is no, people jump into those thoughts because they're looking for the answers and the solutions.
Yeah.
And they think if I sit in there long enough and I have a scenario worked out, well, we can do this and we can do that and we can say this to him and he can feel that. And there is no end to that. And
not just unhelpful to you, but unhelpful to your son as well.
absolutely.
Because he needed
Yeah.
you to be
Yeah.
his mum.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he needed me to just walk into a room and have a conversation with him. That's all he needed from me. And, you know, I'm just so ridiculously grateful that I had learnt mindfulness. And sometimes I think the universe was preparing me for Will's accident. You know, it's like, why did I randomly go and study that? You know, whilst I was studying, I was working as a medical sales rep, and one of my products was wound care. You know, one of the biggest issues with spinal cord injury is wounds from pressure. And it's like the universe was like saying, what are the things you're going to need? You're going to be mindful. You're going to need know how to dress a wound.
Yeah.
You're going to have to be in a job which brings around really cool people so Will can stay connected with athletes. It's like they were just designing it for me.
And then lightning strikes, as you said before, we turned the microphones on, lightning strikes twice for you and your family.
Yeah. As I said, I've got 4 children, 2 girls, 2 boys, and our youngest is a 12-year-old boy, and he was 2 weeks shy of starting prep when Will was injured, and he became, super compliant was his role in our family. I think kids adopt a role that just best serves them and is most helpful at the time, and his was, hey, I'll just fly under the radar. And, a beautiful kid, but just flies under the radar. And COVID came, and it was like at the end of COVID, I sort of looked at him through different eyes and thought, God, we've got this kid who's actually quiet. He's got low self-esteem and he's frustrated. He doesn't love school. He doesn't know where he belongs. Will was an incredibly gifted athlete, like freakishly gifted athlete. So he'll never match him in football. And so I think what spinal cord injury has taught us as a family is just roll up your sleeves and find, like, we don't ponder on finding, an answer to things. We don't, is it right? And we're just like, what, if it's not working this way, let's do it a different way. So a very short notice, what Gus loves is being free, and he doesn't like football and cricket that have rules, and he loves surfing and skating and those sort of things. So we thankfully had enough resources to be able to go to Mount Buller for the winter, and we put him in the race club up there. He'd actually never snowboarded before. He'd skied but not snowboarded. We stuck him in up there with minimal thought. Loved it. It's like we got this whole new kid back, and it was fantastic. But what we noticed when he was up there was he had a little dot in his eye that we knew was there. We'd been told by an optometrist before it was a freckle, but it was like watching it grow before our eyes up on the snow where he's exposed to a lot of light until, he's got this big black, so it was like a second pupil that's even bigger in his eye. And so we took him to a specialist thinking, they'd say, yeah, the freckle's grown. And then that specialist was like, I'd like you to go to a different specialist. So we go to a different specialist. That different specialist is like working in, he's in the oncology part of the hospital. And then that specialist is like, I'd like to take this to a panel of specialists. It's like, we don't like panel of specialists.
Yeah,
that's no good. And, it was framed up to us that it was most likely a melanoma tumour. The difference between his and another melanoma tumour is it hasn't started at the back of the eye, it was on the surface of the eye. And when you're told that, it was like all the resilience I had through spinal cord injury, all of the I can do hard things, I can find solutions, went out the window and dropped into that. Like, are you kidding me? Like, this is so unfair.
Yeah.
And I actually don't have the energy to do it again.
Yeah.
Like, yes, I did that spinal cord injury really well. I was like, I'm throwing my toys out of the pram and I'm just not, I can't do this. And it was all about me. If I reflect, I can't do this. I don't have the energy. I don't want to be back in a hospital. I don't want the journey that cancer presents. It's not fair. I hadn't even thought of Paul. I mean, I did. Of course I did. I was a parent. But it was really like that survival, like, no, this is tipping me over the edge. And
Because I guess you're thinking about, like, you know, what it took to be there for Will, to go through all that again for Gus is like, I guess you're probably just like checking yourself to see, is like, can I do this?
yeah, now, of course I can, like, you know, but I just honestly believed I couldn't.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this. I was like a, you know, really petulant child. And I became really like, all I could see around me was like healthy children and healthy families. And it was like, how did I get this so wrong? You know, my girls, they dropped into this black humour about being the superior genetic, you know. You know, but watching them sort of drop into humour as a way of like, I can't do this pain again, so let me just do hardcore humour here.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, to tell a long story short, he, well, actually, I won't skip over this bit. The panel came back and the panel said, well, you know, the majority of the panel want to go radiation therapy, and there was one guy on the panel that wants to do surgery. You choose.
Oh, that's what you guys are for.
And it was like, where do you start with that? Like, how do you choose that? It's like, okay, so radiation, these are the downsides of radiation, and these are the downsides of surgery. Let us know. We'll book him in for December the 9th, and you let us know which one that you come up with. And which we've never had that in spinal cord injury. In spinal cord injury, there's no choices. You're not choosing between this treatment or that treatment. And funnily enough, I used to say to people, well, the positive about spinal cord injury is anything you try, you're not like, I always think of people in that journey of cancer, like, do I do chemo? Don't I do chemo? Do I try this? Don't I try this? Like, how do you ever sit comfortably knowing backing your choice? And I used to say to people, we don't have to worry about that with spinal cord injury. There is no choice. And now I have a doctor saying, you choose.
That
you know,
is painful decision making.
And like, imagine, you know, imagine getting it wrong. And thankfully, my husband and I were both on the same page, and I cannot even justify our reasons, but we both decided surgery, which was the least, you know, more of the panel went radiation. One dude was like, surgery. You know, I said to him on the call, he's like, yeah, but, you know, they're saying radiation, but I reckon I can do it. I'm like, well, how many surgeries have you done like this before? Well, you know, maybe done like one in the last 10 years, and I'm the sort of only guy in Australia that's done it. Well, I drop into my performance coach. Well, do you think, like, do you feel up to this? Like, you know, trying to, like, do we need to have a session before you do this surgery?
Yeah. Wow.
And thankfully, we were both on the same team with that. And thankfully, they were able to remove the tumour, and, you know, it's like we've been let out of jail. So it's,
Is his eyesight okay?
yeah, it's a bit blurry. And, you know, I mean, as I'm telling this story, my fear of other people's opinion, I'm imagining every listener right now who has a child or their own journey with cancer wanting to, you know, stab me because I've said, and, you know, took the tumour out and it's all good.
That's your story. That's like, I don't know how else you're meant to finish that story.
It's like I'm acutely aware of how fortunate we are, and it's sort of like we've all just stopped and looked at each other going, did that really happen? I've many a times said to people, because they're like, we can't believe you let Gus do snowboarding when he's doing flips and tricks and you have a son who's, you know, quadriplegic. And my response to that was always, well, lightning doesn't strike twice. Like, I feel like I'm safe because we have had our one tragedy and we're all good. So, yeah, it caught me off guard, really caught me off guard.
Gosh.
How with the way you were describing with Will when you're going through that whole process with Will and sort of, I guess, processing it really, you sort of talked about, like, you know, at least our family hasn't broken up, and you know, you're sort of looking at the positives, trying to find positives in the situation, in such a painful situation. So is gratitude like a big part of like what you're like in trying to process that? I mean, that sounds like I'm no gratitude expert, but from what Hugh talks about and what I've heard, it's like that sounds like kind of gratitude.
So I, in that moment, was not trying to be grateful that our family hasn't broken up. I was looking for evidence to just call out what was happening in the moment. So trying to get my attention on to just I'm walking in the room by sort of saying to my attention, hey, none of that's happened. You don't need to go to that story because it's not happened yet. You don't need to go to that story because it's not real. It's just making it up. So I was trying to call that out. But there was a moment in the Royal Children's Hospital, I was in like a little meditation garden and I picked up a rock and I had it just started carrying it in my pocket. For me, that was a way of having something physical to ground onto. If I could feel a rock in my pocket, it gives my attention something to sit on. And now no longer is my attention up in those stories because it's feeling the rock in my pocket. So that's the point of the rock. And I really wanted it to be a gratitude stone. Like I really knew that that's what I should have, but I could not find gratitude in that moment because I was not grateful. Like for people to say, oh, but he's alive. It's like I wasn't entirely convinced that that was the best option. Like how that's full on to say, isn't it? But it's like, that's real. So what I discovered was not gratitude, but I discovered acceptance, and that acceptance was like this gateway to gratitude. And if I can't accept what's going on, then I have no possibility of ever being grateful for where I'm at and what the situation is. So acceptance became a much more powerful tool. Now, I was working, Will broke his neck the day before pre-season started at Richmond Football Club, and I'd worked with a few individual players, but this was them saying, hey, we're going to give you the whole team. And then the day before that started, Will broke his neck. And we decided it was really important that I keep that job. So I'd go to the club and back again. And, as I was doing that, I really was trying to bring to life for these boys mindfulness in a way which was like follow the red ball, like bouncy ball, like just follow the steps. And so many people would say to me around acceptance, we just have to accept it. You just have to accept it. And I'd be like, well, tell me how. If you can give me a step-by-step process, then I will do that process, I promise you. But no one is telling me how to accept this. And I discovered my own step-by-step formula for acceptance, but I think that drove a lot of how I practice now, which is like, let me give you a step-by-step, do this, say that, move like this. So for me, I worked out how to do acceptance, and doing acceptance, it's not waiting till you've arrived at this place of like, I'm at peace now. I'm okay that my son's never going to walk again. It's like I have to choose to do acceptance multiple times a day, every day. Still, I think I'll do that forever. I don't think I'll ever arrive at a place of acceptance. I think I will just do acceptance.
You mean doing acceptance in regards to Will?
So when I say do acceptance, what I mean, how I do acceptance, and it might be different for someone else, but if you ask me, well, how do I accept that? What I would say to you is step one, ask yourself, can I change this? No, I cannot change spinal cord injury. Now, some people are like, I can't accept that, my sister did that or my boss did that. It's like, well, the first question to ask yourself, can you change it? And usually if you're in a fight with something, you can't change that. So actually call that out. I cannot change this. So then it's about choosing a thought that actually dials down the pain and the struggle for you. So my acceptance thought around spinal cord injury was, this is Will's journey, and I don't understand this journey for Will and why he's on this journey, but this is his journey and he's equipped with enough to cope with this journey, and it's not my job to take it away from him. So that dialed down the struggle for me of I've got to fix it, and what if I can't fix it? So that dialed that down for me. But the most important thing, and this is a bit we miss all of the time, I have to do acceptance with my body. I have to, when I'm around Will, soften my shoulders. I have to take a deeper breath. I have to soften my voice. I have to get my body around Will in a state of, this is okay. I'm safe here as a mum. He's safe as a mum. And stop the fight, the fix it, it's going to look different for everyone, but when I'm not accepting spinal cord, I'm trying to fix it, trying to manipulate it, trying to find the answer to it. So then I have to do acceptance. The fight will come back, do acceptance. The fight will come back. This is just going to be my journey.
I don't want to throw anything else in at the moment because I feel like this has been so helpful, so powerful. So, yeah, I just feel like we're better off getting you to come back, if that's okay, to do more topics.
Sure.
Because there's so much more to talk about, but I don't want to dilute.
Yeah.
I don't want people here going, oh, I remember when she said earlier on that. I just want to, that's amazing. That is incredible what you've just offered up to our listeners there. I feel very grateful for you.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. I just want to say, Hugh, that I received an email or a Facebook message when Will was injured, and I used to put some stuff on Facebook when Will was injured, and this person wrote that they were from overseas. So do we have woodworms? I don't even know what they are. Are they termites? Yeah. She used the word woodworm. Maybe it's a termite is what I thought. And they were explaining in this email that they had an extreme fear of woodworms and they hadn't left their house as a result of it for like 10 years. And that how much me sharing Will's journey was helping her learn and understand this. And I was like, someone would hold up spinal cord injury compared to that and go, well, that's irrelevant. It's like it's not. When we are stuck, when we are paralysed, it's no different to what Will is. He's physically stuck. That doesn't mean he mentally can't be free and living this great life, and someone else is physically free, but they're mentally really stuck. And I just think we as humans need to really accept that life's tough. It's rugged, it's hard, it's, for all of us, we don't need spinal cord injury or cancer or a tragedy to make it difficult for us. And that we also can't control we didn't choose this makeup of how our system works and how the alarms go off and what makes us fearful, but we have control over managing that. And I want to bring tools to the world that help you manage that.
Is there any, I know you have your own company doing your work, but are there any like books or resources that kind of, for people who are listening to this going like, yeah, I want more of that. I want, like, what can I literally download now to kind of continue learning about the sort of stuff that you're talking about? Is there like a book that you're like, this is the one?
Yeah. The Mindful Athlete. It's by George Mumford. It's mindfulness and elite athletes. I give it to all my athletes. He was an athlete in college basketball heading to, the big time. And I think it was a knee reconstruction, and then he had excessive pain and he became a heroin addict. And he was a full-blown addict going nowhere, but he was high-functioning addict, so he had a corporate job at the same time. And then one time he left his corporate job and he went to a meditation centre and he did this meditation over, and we haven't even talked, but we can save that for another time, on the role meditation plays in mindfulness. But he went to a meditation centre, sat for an hour, and then went back to work and went, oh my God, that's better than heroin. And so then he started to go back, and one day he went and he just never went back to work. He just stayed at the meditation centre, and he started becoming this mindfulness teacher in prisons, and he ended up the mindfulness coach for Chicago Bulls. And because I'm around a lot of athletes, I give them the book The Mindful Athlete because it tells his story as well as gives some mindfulness tips and whatever. But what I would say to your question is, it doesn't matter what the book is. If you start with following people on social media that are more getting the messages about, this mindfulness, and then just start building this awareness slowly by exposing yourself to more information around that. I'm not pissing in your pocket, Hugh, with the Resilience Project, but we moved up north for a medical trial for Will just before COVID. The trial didn't go ahead because talking about non-attachment. The trial didn't go ahead because of COVID. So people are like, how do you cope with that? I'm like, I choose not to attach to the fact that could possibly ever go ahead or I would not survive. But our kids had always been at schools that had the Resilience Project, and they went to this new school in northern New South Wales, and it was like hit them in the face how these kids, they're like, Mum, they don't even know what the word empathy means. They don't know what the word mindfulness means, And that wasn't coming from me at home. They were going through schools that were using this language. Now, could my kids pass a test on what mindfulness is and how to comply to it and how to practice it, properly and non-attached to this and non-judgmental to that? No. But they had this awareness that this concept of, being kind to yourself and to other people and, looking through a lens of gratitude, they just were starting to be exposed to it at these schools. And was it exactly right all the time? No, because it gets watered down. Different teachers take it on. I'm sure, I don't know, we've never had this conversation, but I'm sure one of the challenges is,
massive,
that
more than half the battle.
you want it like this and they teach it like that. And then it's like Chinese whispers, the version the kids get is very different to what your intention was. But they're just being made aware that it exists and it's how we live our life. And so the starting point for people is like just start to listen to podcasts that are speaking this language before you don't have to go down this hard and fast rule. But maybe when I come back, I would like to go, okay, well, if Emma's just told us mindfulness is too hard not to do that, what am I supposed to do? Because I think there's like a mental toolbox with it's choosing the right thing for me. If I'm anxious, what do I choose? If I'm distracted, what do I choose? If I'm bitter, what do I choose? I think that we should know that there's different tools for different things, and that's a really good starting place.
Incredible.
To finish, how's Will these days? How's Will today?
I hate that question.
Sorry.
It's a hard question. Like, my husband and I always say, what do you say to that question? Because he's great. And he just had his 21st, and I stood in the shoes of another parent and thought, what would I think of my kid if the speeches were saying this about him and the speeches were all about his ability to connect to people and support people and his loyalty and, what this incredible person with all of this inner strength is, was he drafted in the AFL? Does he have a uni degree? So he is phenomenal. He's living this purposeful life. He's connecting with people. He's aware of himself. He manages his emotions. So he's incredible. But spinal cord injury sucks. It's horrific. It's like the gift that keeps on giving. It's just, makes everything difficult, not just for him, for siblings, for care. There's so many layers to how difficult spinal cord injury is. I couldn't begin. So on one hand, he's phenomenal and is this person that is got so much to offer the world. And on the other, he has an injury that is just crap.
Yeah.
Sorry to ask you such a bad question to finish. Josh asks great questions and I ask terrible questions.
But Ryan's already got 2 gold stars, so he wins today's Academy.
Yeah, put that in the show notes.
Pupil of the day.
Of the day.
Yeah.
Well
But
done.
Doesn't happen often.
But in all seriousness, if people want to hear from Will, he did a fantastic episode on Dylan Friends, our very good friend, Dylan Buckley's podcast, Dylan Friends.
Yeah.
They can hear from him.
They can. And that's that disassociation thing. Like, I haven't listened to it.
Yep. Okay.
Because I don't want to hear I don't have a picture of the beach in my mind. I don't know what happened at the beach. I've never asked. I don't want to know because if I don't have that picture, I can't go back into it and ruminate over it. So I don't want to hear that. It's not, people would say, you're not healed, you're not dealing with it. It gets me through the day.
Unbelievably powerful conversation, Emma.
Yeah,
thank you so
thank
much.
you.
I feel
Thanks
like
for
I've just
having me.
learnt so much from you today.
We haven't even talked about running. It's brilliant for running, mindfulness.
Oh,
We'll put that next time. We'll have a mindfulness
next episode.
running.
Yeah.
well, there's 2 things I want to do. Talk about that because that's like earlier this year we got some news that wasn't great and I ran half an hour later I was running and I was just completely changed my outlook on it. So because the red ball was just with me.
Had a job, yeah.
Yeah. I was with your hypnosis. I was hoping next time you
we
could
didn't
maybe
go chickens, yeah. No one's clucked yet.
Oh shit, Josh is a chicken.
Yeah. Oh, look at that.
I didn't even
I
notice.
have my watch,
is
you
good.
know, just swinging my watch in front of his eyes.
Wow, a full chicken. Incredible. I can
Amazing.
speak English.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I wanted you to hypnotise me to. I need to go to bed at 9:30, and it's always 11:30. I want some. I just want you to. I was hoping
Okay.
maybe we could do that, and you could make sure I go to bed at 9:30. Anyway,
All right.
can't wait to chat to you again.
Yes,
Really
thank
appreciate
you.
how
Thanks,
generous
Emma.
you've been today
Thank
with your
you.
time,
Thank you.
with your
Appreciate
stories.
it.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.